So you've learned a bit about refugees and refugee camps in the last few days. You know that the country of Kenya has said it will close down Dadaab, a refugee camp with hundreds of thousands of people. We've also learned some new words which we will go over now. It's important that you know those words because you're going to read them in an article with me in just a few moments. Take a few minutes if you need to pause this podcast and review the words. Repatriate. This is a verb that means to send a refugee back to his or her own country. Shut down. This is also a verb that means to close. In this context, refugee camps. Security threat. Noun, a danger to safety of people. Here, Kenya. Devastating. Adjective, very damaging. Consequences. Noun, results. At odds. This means in conflict with something. Harbor. This is a verb that means to hide a person who has possibly broken the law. Smuggle. Verb, to take things illegally in and out of a country. Minimize. This is a verb that means to try to reduce something to a very small amount. Insurgency. This is a noun that means rebellion, revolt, or uprising. Take a look at the picture of a refugee camp. It is in some ways like Dadaab. It's crowded and people are living very closely together in difficult conditions. We're going to read an article about the closing of Dadaab now. This article is from the Voice of America Learning English website. As you read, pay close attention to the following questions. Write the answers on a piece of paper or in your notebook. You might stop the podcast as we go through the questions so you can write the questions down too. This will help you to understand the article. Where are most of the refugees from in the Dadaab camp? Does the United Nations approve of the closure of Dadaab? Why? When did Al-Shabaab start attacking Kenya? What does Jerry Simpson of Human Rights Watch say about the refugees? What does Mwenda Njoka of the Interior Ministry say that terrorists have done with the camps? What kind of agreement did Kenya and Somalia sign with the United Nations in 2013? Has Kenya threatened to close refugee camps before? Let's start to read the article now. Stop and listen to any parts of the article that you didn't understand. Hearing it again can help you understand and remember the information. Kenya is planning to close the world's largest refugee camp, which it says poses a security threat that could lead to terrorist attacks. An estimated 330,000 refugees will be affected when the Dadaab camp in northeast Kenya is shut down. Most refugees there are from Somalia who escaped conflict in their country. Kenya's government announced plans to close the camp within the shortest time possible, but the United Nations and international human rights groups have criticized the move. The UN Refugee Agency urged Kenya this week to reconsider its decision. The agency said in a statement that closing the camp would have devastating consequences. It urged the government to avoid taking any action that might be at odds with its international obligations. Kenya's Interior Minister Joseph Nkasiri said at a news conference Wednesday that the camp threatens Kenya's security. He said the government believes the camp harbors extremists from Somalia's Islamic Al-Shabaab group and is used to smuggle weapons. Al-Shabaab has carried out several major terror attacks in Kenya. In 2013, an attack on a Nairobi mall killed 67 people. A 2015 attack on a college in the town of Garissa left 148 people dead. Al-Shabaab began launching attacks in Kenya after Kenyan troops entered Somalia to fight the militant group in 2011. Kenya's government has admitted that closing the refugee camps will harm refugees. It urged the international community to take steps to minimize the pain and suffering. Human Rights Watch senior refugee researcher Jerry Simpson says refugees are not the source of security threats in Kenya. There's not a single shred of evidence that any registered Somali refugees in Kenya have been behind any attacks in Kenya. Simpson said that in the cases of both the mall and the university attacks, Somali nationals who came directly from Somalia were charged with the terror offenses, not registered refugees. But Interior Ministry spokesman Mwenda Njoka disagrees, saying that terrorists have used refugee camps to plan and train for attacks. I will tell you for a fact, like the people who carried out the terror attacks at Westgate, several of them were traced either through phone calls or through various contacts, intelligence, to refugee camps in Dadaab. Government and security expert Mumo Nizao agrees that terrorists have infiltrated the camps and that the camps do pose a security risk. But he is calling for a careful approach to dealing with the situation. He said one option would be to relocate the camps. They can move them right inside Somalia, but in a way that is safe for them, and they can be accessed by the international refugee agencies and other aid agencies. Kenya and Somalia signed an agreement with the United Nations Refugee Agency in 2013 to voluntarily repatriate Somali refugees. As Somalia has slowly recovered from years of conflict, the Dadaab camp population decreased from more than 500,000 refugees to 350,000. The United Nations said it planned to repatriate 50,000 more refugees this year, but officials admitted this repatriation would be a difficult task because the Somali government is still fighting an insurgency from Al-Shabaab. Kenya, which has been hosting refugees for nearly 25 years, previously threatened to close the camps but did not follow through. The group Human Rights Watch noted that politicians often bring up the refugee issue during election cycles. Elections in Kenya are set for next year. That's the end of the article. Remember, you can replay any part of it if you need to hear it again. Nice work!